Play clock at 5. Pass is intercepted at the goal line by Malcolm Butler.
Yes, he did. He gives it to Henry.
Quick snap. Breeze. Pass is incomplete. No flag.
4th and goal. And they're going to snap it, and it's Trey Burton who throws caught. Touchdown.
Ladies and gentlemen, what a week 1 of the NFL season did we have? I mean, what better way for football to return to us than getting a absolutely fantastic Thursday night game, from getting a great slate of Sunday games? Then I don't even know. I still don't know how to react to that Ravens-Raiders game, because, I mean, yeah, the most Raiders stuff happened. The Ravens look good, but then they looked awful, but then the Raiders look good, and I still can't wrap my head around what the hell went on there. I mean, Vegas is crazy. I think that's just safe to say. But we had some crazy things happen, such as some real good overtime stuff. We had the Cardinals making an emphatic statement with their win over the Titans. We had the Chiefs staying dominant. We had the Packers look as bad as they almost ever have, and Aaron Rodgers with a just shocking performance. Is he taking the Packers? We're going to have to talk about that one. And Jameis Winston, the LASIK, has worked. Matt Stafford looked amazing against the Chicago Bears, but oh man, we got all that to talk about and more with our Week 1 NFL breakdown. Of course, I'm your host, Ross Allen. And we got a great list of topics to go over today, such as the biggest winners and losers of Week 1 of the NFL season, some possible overreactions, or am I kind of on the spot with what I'm saying here? We talk Trey Lance and Justin Fields, along with the Packers, of course, and are the Cardinals playoff bound? Then we're going to finish things off with, of course, some power rankings, some predictions, and then none other than the Nene of the week. And if you're a fan of the team, plug your ears, close your eyes, because I'm going to be bringing up some awful memories that just happened a number of days ago. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me here today. Of course, if you're new, go ahead and follow us everywhere. Of course, the best place to see everything is at the4thandlong.com for all of your NFL information, news, topics, videos. Go on over to thefourthandlong.com/NFL. And of course, I'd be remiss if I forgot to leave out just a huge thank you to everyone that tuned into our preseason show, to everyone that keep on following us on Instagram and on Twitter, YouTube. The subscribers are up, and so I really do appreciate everything that you do for us. And also a huge shout out to our Patreons. Of course, we'll get a bigger shout out them at the end of the show like usual. But if you want to become a member, and the best way to support the show, if you listen to our UFC stuff, I mean, my man Blake, he's wanting that paycheck. You could see the sadness in his eyes. So one way to help is just starting at $1 a month. You can go on over to our Patreon, and that is patreon.com/4thandlong. And hey, just $1 a month. Just $1 a month, and that's all it does to help us keep pumping out this tremendous content. And something to be looking forward to later this week as well is a interview. We finally got our first in-person interview. I went and got invited to a MMA gym of a local fighter. Jared Melton, lean, mean, killing machine, dude's undefeated. And he has a fight coming up, and it's a really great story. Some crazy stuff that you need to hear. That'll be dropping later this week. But ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let's get on into our biggest winners of Week 1 of the NFL season. And I just got to shout out the man that's seemingly been through everything. He's been traded, he's been cut, he's been replaced, he's been stabbed in the freaking lungs by a crazy-ass team doctor. That's Tyrod Taylor, and he had one of the best games of his career with the Texans. He's named their starter. He's named the starter over Deshaun Watson. Now we don't need to go into probably the whys and the biggest reasons why he's the starter of this team over Deshaun Watson, but he is. And he put up a couple tutters, put some good yards, just looked great as he led the Texans to almost a shocking win over the Jacksonville Jaguars. Of course, we're going to have some things to say about the Jags, particularly pertaining to the urban legend, Meyer. Next winner was the Western divisions, because you had the AFC West and the NFC West. They combined for 8-0. They were both perfect on the day. Of course, over there in the AFC West, you had the Broncos getting a really solid win over the Giants. You had the Raiders beating the Ravens in overtime on Monday night. You had the Kansas City Chiefs with their... I was kind of surprised when I saw this, but believe it or not, it was their defense that comes up clutch late in the game to secure a win over the Cleveland Browns. And then, of course, you had the Chargers with a solid game over and winning against the Washington football team in Washington. And, bad day for Washington, bad day for some of those fans on there with some sewage leaking on them. I really hope you saw that, because that's disgusting. I guess that's what happens when you don't have a name for your team, or if you're just an organization that's ran by Dan Snyder. Take whatever option that you will. And then over in the NFC West, of course, it was the San Francisco 49ers. It looked like they were going to get a huge win over the Lions, but they almost blow it. But then they're able to settle things down. They get the win there. You had the Rams getting a really solid win on Sunday Night Football. Matthew Stafford made his debut with the Rams, and man, he looks like a MVP candidate. And some of you may be surprised. I'm not. I saw this thing coming the whole way. Thank you very much. Along with a lot of other people, so I can't take too much credit there on that take. But then we also, of course, had the Seahawks. They look good against the Colts. And, one of the most surprising wins, I think, of the week, the Arizona Cardinals looked fan-frickin-tastic. Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, Chandler Jones, they all looked amazing, and they made that star-studded Titans offense look like some chumps. Of course, we'll be talking about the Cardinals here a little bit later. And then the last true winner of the week, I would say the Chargers offensive line, and more specifically, Rashawn Slater, because that rookie offensive tackle, there is all this hype about Penei Sewell. I still am a firm believer in Sewell, but coming off the best tackle, best offensive lineman taken in the draft so far is Rashawn Slater, and he made one hell of a debut because he has 49 pass blocking snaps. He gives up 0 sacks, 0 QB hits, 0 QB pressures, and 0 quarterback hurries. That was against Chase Young and that really solid front seven of the Washington football team. And the offensive line as a whole, they only give up 2 sacks and 5 quarterback hits. And if they're able to keep this up, Justin Herbert is going to have an even better season than he did last year. And if they could stay healthy, man, the Chargers might finally have an offensive line. That's been one of the things that's been hurting them recently. That's why they haven't really, a big reason at least, why they haven't had ultimately success in the season. They've had fairly enough regular season success. Nothing. They've have a couple of playoff appearances. Haven't really been able to make any deep runs, but if they keep this going, man, you just might be able to see that. And let's talk losers. And I think the biggest loser has to be Urban Meyer, because in his head coaching debut of the Jacksonville Jaguars, he makes his return to football after retiring after a really solid tenure at Ohio State. Man, first of all, it's just a really bad weekend for Ohio because is a state, because Ohio State gets upset by the Oregon Ducks. They possibly lose some recruits there. The Browns lose in devastating fashion, and then you have Urban Meyer, one of the most legendary people that's ever lived in the state of Ohio, oh man, he looks awful. And his Jacksonville Jaguars get blown out by one of, at least on paper, one of the worst teams in the league. And for a guy that really it hasn't seemed to earn the respect of his players, the respect of and maybe even some of his staff too, and at least the respect of the league and some of the league pundits, this was really not going to help his case here. I mean, this just destroys any like pro Urban Meyer argument, and he's already digging himself into a super deep hole. And there's something we're going to have to talk about here in the next segment when we talk about possibly some overreactions here. But man, not looking good. Really bad way to kind of start your tenure with the team. And it's not going to be any easier because in week 2, they have the Denver Broncos, and the Denver Broncos have a really solid defense against a Jaguars team that looked like it struggled, an offense that looked like it struggled. And that was one of the biggest concerns going into the season was how is this offense going to look? Then they end up losing Travis Etienne at the beginning of the year too. Oh man, it's real bad luck if you're Urban Meyer right now. And my next loser in relation to I guess the Cardinals team we're going to be talking about, it's Ryan Tannehill, because he goes out. He does not have a good game, but even worse, he gets stripped twice, and he gets sacked 5 times, let alone another handful of quarterback hits. He took a beating in this game, and he's going to be waking up with some bruises. There's only so much that rib protector can do, and Ryan Tannehill's a fairly big guy too, but also, I mean, he's getting a little older. Might be a little hard to get out of bed in the morning. Oh, man, this was just such a tough game for Ryan Tannehill. Tough game for me too, considering I have him in 2 fantasy football leagues. Saw how well that worked out for me. Also, I have A.J. Brown in 1 and Derrick Henry in 1. Thank you, Tennessee. You really helped me and did a lot of favors this weekend. Shout out to you guys. You better pick it up. And my third loser of the week, it goes to Lamar Jackson and the Baltimore Ravens. Just because the Ravens lose, I mean, the Ravens, they're trying to be Super Bowl contenders. They're already getting destroyed in the offseason and the preseason because of all these injuries that keep happening. I mean, they're losing their time backfield. They're losing some defensive backs. So some really bad luck there for the Baltimore Ravens. And then they have a crushing defeat on Monday Night Football in the game where they didn't play great, but they still should have won. And then Lamar Jackson, a guy, I mean, one of the most criticized quarterbacks in the league for how good he is. For talent and criticism, that whole ratio he has going, he might be the top one there. And all he did was give almost more ammo to his critics in this game because although he still has a good game, about 220 yards passing in this one, about 80, 90 yards rushing in this one, has passes for a touchdown. A decent game by all means. There's nothing bad about that. I wouldn't complain about that as a fan, as a coach, as a teammate, as a fantasy owner. Wouldn't complain about that one. But he has a chance to lead the Ravens to a game-winning to like a game-winning drive there late in overtime with about 4 minutes to go. But at his own 33, gets sacked, fumbles the football. Raiders get that ball. They end up going and scoring the game-winning touchdown right there on that next possession. So like I said, not a bad game for the Ravens, Lamar Jackson. An awful way to finish, though. You can't lose to the Raiders if you want to be legitimate contenders, and if you want to be one of the best quarterbacks in the league, you can't, at least normally, you can't blow a potential game-winning drive situation like this. And if Lamar Jackson wants to develop into one of the league's top quarterbacks, I mean, he's representing himself, but if he wants to be one of the higher-paid quarterbacks in the league, you can't do this. You ultimately have to do better there. I'm not putting all the blame on Lamar Jackson. I'm just saying that at least from optics, it's not good. But before we get into our possible overreactions, or maybe I kind of got things right there, just of course want to make sure that you guys go on over, follow us on Twitter and Instagram. Twitter at 4th Long Radio, Instagram at 4th Long Radio. Post daily, about 8 to 9 times a day there. And we do have a lot of fun, love interacting with all of you. So go ahead, make sure to check that stuff out. But like I said, week 1, I mean, anytime. Preseason is really fun to overreact to anything we see. And it's always fun to maybe just drop some hot takes, or at least ones that seem hot, and then to go into those and to really analyze if they're as hot as you might think. And so we'd love to see, of course, as we go through this, we'd love to see whether you guys can comment on YouTube, or leave a 5-star review over on Apple Podcasts, or if you hit us up on the socials about these. But we'd love to see your opinions on whether these are a little hot, or if you might actually want to look in this one a little deeper. And of course, the first one I'm going to say, bringing up the Cardinals, I mean, there's going to be a theme this week because you kind of have to talk about them. Of course, shout out to me because I said that, in our preview show, said that the Cardinals were going to be the most surprising team of the season and that the Green Bay Packers were going to be the most disappointing. It's only 1 week, but I'm kind of on track already. So the first one, of course, is the first kind of reaction statement that I want to give you guys is that Chandler Jones has already wrapped up Defensive Player of the Year. And that, it's a really great way. He's off to a great start. He's already has a 3-sack lead on the second place guys. Von Miller, they're in second, tied with Chris Jones, Javon Hargrave, and Michael Pierce of Minnesota, or of Kansas City, Philadelphia, Minnesota, respectively. They're Von Miller. Von Miller, of course, he had a really, really solid game in his first week back from a season-ending injury where he missed it going into the week 1 of last year towards Achilles. He bulldozing dudes with power moves, hitting dudes with some vicious spin moves, just some really, really great pass rushing moves, and Von Miller proving that he's still one of the best pass rushers in the league. Of course, it helps when you're going against a turnstile of an offensive line that the New York Giants have, but still a really good game for Von Miller nonetheless. But Chandler Jones, he really made a Pro Bowl in level tackle, one of the better tackles in the league, a left tackle, Taylor Lewan. He looked awful. Let's be honest. He looked awful, and that was not. Obviously you gotta blame Taylor a little bit there. He took all the blame himself, but Chandler Jones is just a freaking specimen, and he already has that. He had 2 forced fumbles to boot. He had another tackle or 2 in that game as well. So, he's already got the leader on here. Some other contenders, of course, T.J. Watt didn't have a great game in week 1. Von Miller, I guess, is going to be up there with the sacks. If you want to look at some other positions, potentially with, interceptions as well. You got to take a look at, a number of guys that already have them. Christian Kirksey, Kevin Baird, Jonathan Jones, Shaq Thompson, Jordan Lewis all have an interception there along with a bunch of others. So no one really stood out from there as well. No one stood out with the tackling. Maybe besides Eric Kendricks, I see bags 15 in the first week, which is a really good pace that he's on. Bobby Wagner right there with 13. But obviously, sacks stand out the most to voters, to fans, to other players and opposing teams. So a 5-sack game is arguably as good as a 25 to 30 tackle game. And so I really like this. Eric Kendricks, getting closer, but 15 tackles is not 5 sacks. Chandler Jones, to me, I wouldn't say he's wrapped it up, but man, he's already off to an insane pace, and it's going to be hard to catch that man. Next one is that Urban Meyer isn't making it to the bye week. And now with this, I already kind of lambasted Urban Meyer a decent amount when we were talking a little bit earlier in the show. But man, if you're Urban Meyer, you already... I think I might go there. I think I might say that Urban Meyer is already on the hottest seat of any coach in the league. Already there. Even harder than Joe Judge. Because I don't know if they really expect too much out of Joe Judge there in New York, ultimately. I know John Gruden was on the hot seat as well. Vic Fangio was on the hot seat, but he got off to a good start. The Broncos get their first win in September in years. Vic Fangio gets his first win in September as a head coach in general. And then the Jags, I mean, there's a lot of pressure on Urban Meyer there in Jacksonville. They have one of the greatest quarterback prospects ever. They have a solid offense there, James Robinson, a good offensive line, Laviska Shenault, and then a pretty good defense there as well. You expect them to win some games, and you expect them to not be 1-15 like you were last year, or be a 1-win team at least. You probably expect them, you want them to at least win 6 games. I don't think that's a crazy margin to give the Jags. Maybe 5 to 6. That's not crazy. If you don't reach that, honestly, that the season looks like a huge disappointment. And his schedule is not getting any easier after Houston. Of course, their bye week is week 7. They still have 5 more games to go until then. And if you take a look at the lineup, it's a home game against Denver, a home game against Arizona, and Cincinnati, a home game against Tennessee, and a home game against Miami, technically, because that one is going to be in London. So, not really a home game, but you understand there. Denver, great defense. That offense should see a lot of success against that Jags defense. Arizona, obviously a fantastic defense and an equally fantastic offense. Cincinnati, surprised a lot of people. They get a win over, not the best Vikings team, but a solid team nonetheless, and they look good. Joe Burrow and that Joe Burrow looked great in his return. And for a receiver that was, putting out quotes saying that it's hard to see the NFL football compared to a college one. He's already looking like one of the best wide receivers of the draft, and there's a reason that he was taken that early. And so, Jamar Chase, man, what a way to make a statement. A couple huge plays in that game. And that Joe Burrow and Chase connection, it's already there. It's almost like they never even left LSU. And then after that, you're going to have the Tennessee Titans, which of course didn't look great against the Cardinals, but still a team with a lot of talent. Should have a good enough defense there. That's going to be a tough test for the Jags. Divisional games are always tough. And then the Miami Dolphins, who got a good win over the Patriots this weekend, and they're looking like they could be a solid team. They're a playoff contender. So that's a tough one as well. So there's a very good chance that the Jags go into the bye week 0-6, and then coming out of the bye week, they got Seattle, they got Buffalo, they got Indianapolis, they got San Francisco, and they really don't have a winnable game, if you really want to call it that, till week 12 against the Atlanta Falcons. So if you look at that, the Jags could be 0-11 and a 6, and they'll have to win out to make it to that 6-11 that will look good. They'll have to only lose one game if they want to make it to that 5-11 at least. If you're or 5-12, if you're 4-13 this season, if you're 3-14 this season, Urban Meyer. I know Eric Miami is looking like the leader for the USC job, but Urban Meyer might be running back to college already after the season. He needs to win, but it's a very tough schedule that he has to go against. And of course, I think one of my least debatable ones here, maybe one of my largest overreaction of the week, might just be that Teddy Bridgewater is a better quarterback than Aaron Rodgers. Of course, Teddy Bridgewater. He goes out and he actually has the best passer rating of any quarterback this week. He gets some good deep shots there. He would have had like a 60-yard touchdown pass if KJ Hamler didn't drop in the end zone. He had he was really efficient with the football, made a lot of veteran moves, escaped pressure a couple of times, avoided the sack, and got the good play out of it. And he looked rock solid, and obviously Aaron Rodgers did not. We'll go more into the Packers here in our next segment. But hey, all I'm saying, I'm just working with the stats that in the performances and the film that I have available this season. And so far, Teddy Bridgewater has looked like years better than Aaron Rodgers. Teddy Bridgewater doesn't have 2 interceptions. In fact, he has 2 touchdowns. Just saying. Don't kill the messenger. Of course, this is an overreaction, but it's a fun one. The other 2, though, Urban Meyer might not be making the bye week. I think that it's an overreaction, but I still think there's a really good chance that he doesn't coach for the Jags or any NFL team next season. Of course, Chandler Jones, wrapping up Defensive Player of the Year, is overreaction. There's still 16 games to go, but he's a clear leader and clear favorite already after week 1. You bet your ass he is. Ooh, boy, man. I always love me some hot takes here. A lot of really good stuff going on. Of course, we roll into some of the stories with between Trey Lance and Justin Fields. The Packers might being done already, and the Cardinals being playoff bound. Just got to say, huge thank you to our sponsor, Thrive Fantasy, and for all your sports prop betting needs. The best place to do it, and one of the easiest ways to get into betting if you haven't yet, is with Thrive Fantasy. Download the app at the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store, or you can go on over to, like I said, thrivefantasy.com. And the fantastic thing is that if you use promo code 4th and Long on deposits $20 and on deposits up to $50, they will match you dollar per dollar. That's essentially 50 free bucks of betting money right there. So go out, get started today. Links are everywhere. Go ahead. Their link is over on our website as well, the4thandlong.com. So go ahead, get started today. Super easy, super fun, and a good way to add maybe a little bit more excitement to the NFL season, even though might not really need it if we're being honest here. But let's roll into a few things I want to talk about, some of my bigger takeaways from week 1 of the NFL season. And got to talk about with the weird situation that Trey Lance and Justin Fields are in. Of course, Justin Fields, he's my favorite quarterback heading out of the preseason and into the regular season. He just looked great for the Chicago Bears, and he should have been the starter. Trey Lance, one of the worst of the 5 first. He is the worst looking 5 of the 5 first round quarterbacks. Or excuse me, let me reword this a little bit better. He's the worst looking of the 5 quarterbacks taken in the first round of the most recent NFL draft. See, that's a lot better, Ross. Good job. Trey Lance, kind of disappointed a lot of people. Justin Fields over-exceeded expectations, at least mine, in many of everyone around the league. And they had some weird scenarios here in their games this week. Of course, Trey Lance, he goes in for one play. He's 1 for 1, 5 yards, and a touchdown. Justin Fields is in for a few plays. He goes 2 for 2 for 10 yards and a 3-yard rushing touchdown. So both guys in for a very limited amount of time. And they both score a touchdown. But then they both go back. I mean, the Niners ultimately, with Jimmy Garoppolo there, it almost wasn't awful. He didn't have a bad game by any stretch of the imagination. 17 for 25, 314 yards, touchdown. But he did have a fumble, though. He was able to recover from that. Jimmy G looked real shaky early, but then he kind of gained confidence, I would say, throughout the game, and really got going there. I mean, Deebo Samuel getting into the game, George Kittle getting into the game, and so he looked good. He looked good. A quarterback that did not look good, though, was Andy Dalton. 27 for 38, 206 yards, no touchdowns, an interception. And, I mean, first off, you're not going to win very many games when Andy Dalton is having to throw the ball 38 times. I understand if you're the Cowboys and Dak Prescott has to throw nearly 50 times. He's a great quarterback, so you can let him do that. And you're not going to win the freaking game with Andy Dalton. Of course, it was pretty much an unwinnable situation with their game against the Rams, a very good team there. And obviously the Bears are not a very good team. But that's not going to work there. And Justin Fields really should have taken over at halftime at the least. It was just weird to see the quarterbacks put these guys in. I mean, Jimmy G fumbles and Justin Fields goes right in. And I mean, Andy Dalton doesn't look great. They get to the red zone. The Bears put Justin Fields in. He gets him a touchdown. Then they don't really do anything with that. And the Niners situation is forgivable just because Jimmy G ended up looking good that game. So I'm okay with what Kyle Shanahan and the San Francisco 49ers said. I have no disagreement with their coaching decisions there. I thought it was fine. Obviously, they're able to win the game as well. But if you're the Bears, there is only 2 things you have to do right now. First off, start Justin Fields. Second off, fire Matt Nagy, because you're not going to be doing jack with Matt, as long as Matt Nagy's a head coach there. I mean, Justin Fields needs to be the starter. If you want to win football games, if you're trying to prove anything, especially if you're Matt Nagy, you're fighting for your job right now. You're not going to keep your job by having Andy Dalton start for your football team. You're just not. You almost have a better chance with Nick frickin' Foles sometimes. Justin Fields needs to be the starter for his team. He needs to be the starter. He should have been the starter on Sunday. He should have been the starter, named the starter the week going into Sunday. He should have been named the starter after week 2 of the NFL preseason, for crying out loud. And the thing is, so he has to be the starter if you want to see success on the team, but also you have to fire Matt Nagy, because as long as Matt Nagy is there, the ceiling of Justin Fields gets lower and lower and lower. As long as Matt Nagy is the head coach in Chicago, Justin Fields will never be able to reach his real potential there. You need to bring someone in that could actually help him succeed, that could help that team succeed, help that organization succeed. It's not Matt Nagy. It has been Matt Nagy for a few years now. The incompetence of the head office, the front office of the Chicago Bears is baffling. I have no idea why they keep Matt Nagy around. Matt Nagy has to have like some sort of blackmail on them for him to not be fired by now. It's ridiculous. I don't understand it. It's one of the worst things in the league right now. And obviously I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here because I get really into this and I truly believe this. I just want to see Justin Fields be a good quarterback. I want David Montgomery to do well for my fantasy team. Is that too much to ask for? Is it? Obviously, I guess, but I really don't think it is. Chicago. It's not a hard decision. It's not a tough decision. I don't know why it's taking you this long. Pull the trigger. Get him out of there. Start Justin Fields. Win some football games. That's what it's about, right? Winning football games. Go do that. Now, speaking of winning football games, or I guess not winning football games, let's talk about the Green Bay Packers. They go out in week 1. They lose to the Saints 38-3. You had famous no more famous Jameis turnovers anymore. You have famous Jameis tutters because that LASIK proved lethal. He puts up 5 touchdowns on the game, and he looks great. Another thing, I know it's week 1, but I'm still going to pat myself on the back for it. I'm going back in January saying that the Saints need to start Jameis Winston. Going into the season, I was saying that the Saints' ceiling is going to be way higher than it ever was with Drew Brees. And they proved my point in week 1 because they beat up on a really talented Green Bay team. A Green Bay team that has one of the best defenses it's seen maybe in a decade, quite possibly. Aaron Rodgers is coming off a MVP caliber, an MVP season. And they go out and they just kind of crap the bed in this one against a Saints team that seemed to be hurting after the loss of Drew Brees, that seemed to be hurting after the loss of some defensive players. They seem to be reeling. They didn't seem to be as good as the Saints team of old, or at least that's what people thought. I guess we're wrong. And I guess the Packers are just a really bad team, or it was just 1 week. Obviously, there's a lot of season left. We're going to wait and see. But it's the stars for the Green Bay Packers that go absolutely quiet. Aaron Rodgers, 15 for 28, 133 yards, and 2 interceptions. No touchdowns on the day, of course. And he had 5 interceptions all season in 2020. He also had a red zone interception in this one as well. And one of my favorite stats of the week is that if you're a quarterback and every snap of the game you go out there and you just immediately throw the ball into the ground, you end up with a 39.6 passer rating. Aaron Rodgers ended with a 32.8 passer rating. Literally, you have to try to get something that bad. And then Aaron Jones. Oh, Aaron Jones looking real good for my fantasy team in one of my leagues. 5 carries, 2 receptions, 22 total yards on the day. And Devonta Adams, one of the most electric wide receivers in the league. Another guy like Aaron Rodgers that's likely out of Green Bay after this year. 5 receptions, 56 yards. Obviously, that's not going to get it done. And one of the biggest questions that people are wondering, and a lot of people I've seen on social media, on football sites, football shows, talk about, is Rodgers purposely tanking the Green Bay Packers? And although I love the question, and wouldn't that be such a badass thing to do if you're Aaron Rodgers? You go in and you just kind of crap all over the franchise that you've been with your whole career on your way out. one hell of a way to make your mark. But I just gotta say, I know a lot of these people are joking when they say the same, or at least they're not fully serious. But there's a lot of people I've seen that are actually trying to defend this point and actually trying to say this. All I gotta say is that if you're actually trying to defend the point and are serious and you actually believe that Aaron Rodgers is purposely tanking the Green Bay Packers, you're a moron. You're absolutely insane, and you're just saying this just to say it at this point. Because why would a multiple-time MVP, a Super Bowl winner, one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time, arguably at least until Patrick Mahomes stepped on the gridiron, the most talented quarterback of all time, purposely try to lose, make himself look bad in the process, and possibly ruin his legacy in the process as well? No, Aaron Rodgers isn't taking the Green Bay Packers. He just had a really bad game. That's all you have to chalk it up to is Aaron Rodgers. He'll bounce back. He's a really damn good quarterback. He's not washed. He's not done. He's not retiring after the season. He just had a really, really bad game. That's all it was. It happens to the best quarterbacks. Tom Brady has had awful games. Joe Montana had awful games. Drew Brees has had awful games. John Elway has awful games. Peyton Manning had an awful season. Aaron Rodgers is going to have bad games here. It just happens. They're going to be relatively fine this season. It's still a very winnable division there in the NFC North. No one in that division won. The Lions are the Lions. They look bad until late against the Niners. The Bears look bad the whole game against the LA Rams. The Vikings lost to the Bengals in a fairly poor played game when, even though kind of got screwed. Maybe keep that in the back of your head. Hint, hint. A little bit of foreshadowing there for all of you guys. But no, Aaron Rodgers not taking the team. Packers still going to win that division. The Vikings probably aren't going to win it. The Lions aren't winning it. The Bears aren't winning it. The Packers might as well win it by default. They can go 10-7, win that division. They might even be able to go 9-8 and still win that division. The Packers are going to be fine. They're not as bad as they look, but oh boy, you have to be ringing those alarm bells there in Green Bay. And the final thing I kind of want to talk about here is that just want to ask the question: if the Arizona Cardinals are playoff bound after beating the Titans, slaughtering the Titans 38-13 in week 1. Of course, their defense shuts down a very potential. I think there'll still be a really solid offensive team. You have to be with that kind of talent. But the Cardinals absolutely handled them this game. Derrick Henry finished with 58 yards. Ryan Tannehill finished with an interception and 2 fumbles. A.J. Brown and Julio Jones combined for 7 receptions and 78 yards. All while Chandler Jones, of course, already mentioned him in this game, 5 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and just like I said earlier, made Pro Bowl offensive tackle Taylor Lewan look absolutely abysmal. In that offense, I mean, let alone you can have a top 3 defense, you can even have a top 3 offense here. Wouldn't that be insane? No team's ever been able to do that. I don't think any team's ever been able to have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense. The Cardinals are already off to a fantastic start. They might be 1-1 in both right now, to be honest. Kyler Murray, 5 total touchdowns in this game, 4 through the air, 1 on the ground. He looked great. He made defenders look silly, and he looked like a really, really damn good quarterback. And it also helps when you have a guy like DeAndre Hopkins able to make some ridiculous toe tap touchdown grabs in the back of the end zone. Him and Christian Kirk look great. They combined for 4 touchdowns in this game, 2 apiece. And it wasn't a fantastic performance, but it was a really solid. It was a solid day for your run backfield. Chase Edmonds and James Conner, they look good, and they also helped out a lot in the pass game too. The offense is extremely explosive. They have talent all over the football field, and they have a really good defensive backup. I didn't even have to mention J.J. Watt there. I hardly even had to mention Budda Baker. Of course, still had a good game. Isaiah Simmons, their draft pick from last year, he looked good. He had an interception in this one. The Cardinals are a full team from special teams to defense to offense. This is a very scary team, and I think right now the odds are plus 500 for them to win the division. If I was a betting man, if I had money to spend, shoot, man, I might just bet on the Arizona. If someone gave me $100 to bet, I might be throwing that on the Arizona Cardinals this year. Make yourself some money if you want a really, really good underdog bet there. And the thing about the playoffs, though, to answer the question if they're playoff bound, is still going to be extremely tough. I had them making the playoffs in my preseason. I still have them making the playoffs here. The Rams, the Rams, the Cardinals, and the 49ers, they all look better than the Seahawks. I still am not sold on the Seahawks making the playoffs this year, but I still wouldn't be surprised if all 4 of those teams make the playoffs. I would have the Cardinals they are the better team than the Seattle Seahawks right now. They're probably a better team than the San Francisco 49ers right now. And, man, I really want to see them against the Los Angeles Rams. Of course, we get that game. Looks like week 4, they'll be in L.A., so circle that one on your calendars there, because that's going to be a really, really important and also really, really damn good game of football. So the Cardinals, I still 100% believe they're playoff bound. If anything, they have a better chance to win the division than just make the wild card. Like I said, though, still a tough division, but they can definitely do it. And they had the best win against the best team of any of the other 3 teams in their division this week as well. Of course, you had Seahawks over the Colts. The Colts aren't as good for the team as the Titans. Rams over the Bears. Bears are not as good as a team as the Titans. Niners over Lions. Lions are not as good as a team as the Tennessee Titans. So if you're a Cardinals fan, you got a really good season to look forward to here. Now, of course, just a few things left on the docket. Of course, with the take a look at some of the power rankings here for week 2 of the NFL season. We're going to take a look at the Kansas City Chiefs, So, of course, the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers still top my list. They were 1-2 going into week 1. They're 1-2 going into week 2. They both get wins. The Chiefs with a better win over a better team than what the Bucs did, but I'm not going to move the Bucs down for their performance against the Dallas Cowboys. I got the Rams moving up here as well. So I got the Rams moving up to number 3. They were moving them up from number 4 in the preseason. Obviously they look real good there. And then the team above them, I'm not going to keep them there, because of course going into the season, my power rankings looked like the Kansas from 1 to 5, the Kansas City Chiefs, the Bucs, the Bills, the Rams, and the Browns. The Bills drop off after their bad loss to the Steelers, one of the most surprising games of the week. So the Saints are going to be able to move up there. Then also the Browns at 5. If you're at 5 and you lose, you're going down, even if it was a loss to the Chiefs. And I have the Arizona Cardinals running out the list at number 5. So power rankings from 5 to 1. The Arizona Cardinals, New Orleans Saints, the LA Rams, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and the Kansas City Chiefs. Got the Rams moving up a spot with the Saints and Cardinals getting onto the list, while the Bills and the Browns drop out. Now we're going to take a look. I want to wrap things up kind of here before we get to the Nay of the week, taking a look at what week 2 of the season has to offer, and I'll give you my bets for these games. Starting us off is going to be the New York Giants and the Washington football team in Washington. I got the football team all the way. They should be able to abuse this offense, and they can't go down 0-2, especially at home. Next game, I got the Raiders and Steelers, and I'll take the Raiders all day on this one. I hate seeing that, especially as a Broncos fan. It feels wrong. It pains me, but I'm just absolutely not sold on the Steelers, even with their win over the Bills. That game was a lot more indicative of the Bills playing poorly than the Steelers playing well, in my opinion there. And also Big Ben, he's still not a good quarterback. Next game is 49ers and Eagles, and I like the Niners in this one, but the Eagles look great against the Falcons. Obviously, the 49ers aren't the Falcons, even if their head coach was the former offensive coordinator for them. I'll take the Niners on the road in this one. Texans and the Browns, I got the Browns all the way. If the Browns lose to the Texans, Oh boy, that would be the most Browns thing to do, but I don't see it happening. Broncos and Jags. I'm taking the Broncos. I'm taking Urban Meyer to take yet another L. He'll start his head coaching stint with the Jags at 0-2. Saints and Panthers. This is actually a really good matchup here. They're in the NFC South. I'll take the Saints. Los Angeles Rams and the Los Angeles Rams and the Indianapolis Colts. The Colts had a bit of a disappointing game against the Seahawks, in my opinion. Their defense was not nearly as good as I thought it would be. Of course, just week one, we're going off of that. And it was a very good Seattle Seahawks team. When you have Russell Wilson slinging the ball to a duo of DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, that's ultimately going to be a bit tough to defend there. But I'll take the Rams in this one. I like to see Matt Stafford against a possibly a better defense here than what he faced against the Chicago Bears. Next game, Bills and Dolphins. The Bills need to get a bounce-back win here on the road. If they start 0-2, it's going to be real tough there. Dolphins could absorb a loss. They're not really too worried about this one. They'll go 1-1. They're still in solid position there. So, like I said, I'll take the Bills. Patriots and Jets. I'm taking the Patriots all the way. They played a tough game against the Dolphins, and the Jets actually had a really good showing against the Panthers. But it wasn't I guess I wouldn't say really good showing, but I guess compared to expectations, it could be seen as a really good showing. But I'll take the Patriots in this one. Bengals and Bears. Give me the Bengals all the way. But man, going back to what I was saying about the Chicago Bears, just start Justin Fields so we can get Joe Burrow versus Justin Fields, man. And that's so much better than Joe Burrow versus Andy Dalton. No, it's not there. Next game, Falcons and Bucks, another NFC South matchup. I predict the Bucks by slaughter. The Falcons are going to get ran out of the building in this one. The Vikings and Cardinals, the Vikings played like they did last week. It's going to be over very, very quickly here. I'll take the Cardinals. Titans and Seahawks. Now, this is one of my most interesting matchups of the week. I'm not really sure how to call this one, to be honest, because I still like the Titans as a team. I'm not super sold on the Seahawks this year, but if we're rolling with a hot hand and it's in Seattle, I'll roll with the Seattle Seahawks here, but wouldn't be surprised if the Titans win this one. Next one, we got the Cowboys and Chargers. I'll take the Chargers in this one because the Cowboys normally don't do well against good defenses. That's what the Chargers have, and I'm very excited to see what Justin Herbert can do to that Cowboys secondary unit. Now, with the second to last game of the week is Sunday night game. It's going to be a really good one between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Baltimore Ravens. If it's half as good as the one we saw last season, man, we're in for a treat with this one. But I'll take the Chiefs. They obviously are the great team. They are my best team in the league. And the Ravens coming off a tough loss against the Raiders. It's going to be really... I'm not too sold about them. Maybe the injuries have really gotten them and really put them in a crap situation. This is a big prove-it game. Not sure if they'll be able to prove it, though. And we get to finish things off Monday night with the NFC North matchup between the Green Bay Packers and the Detroit Lions. I'm worried this is going to be a lot closer of a game than it should be if you're a Packers fan. If you're a Packers fan, I would be worried about this. But the Packers should be able to handle it. They should be able to handle it in Lambeau as well. And they really can't afford to lose to the Lions. But ladies and gentlemen, it's about that time. It's time to wrap things up. And of course, the best way to wrap things up is with the Nene of the Week. And the winner of this week's Nene of the Week award goes to the Minnesota Vikings. And that's for them getting screwed. They'll take... They got screwed the most by the officials out of any team in week one. They're the most screwed over team of the season so far. I think it's Justin Jefferson who should have had a touchdown, wasn't called that way. And then what happened in overtime 4 minutes ago, the Vikings are on the Bengals 40. They're driving, and this is a game where it just takes a score. So they're just trying to get into field goal range at the least. Happened 2 minutes left as well. I got that. It happened 2 minutes left in overtime. Dalvin Cook runs the ball. He fumbles, but his butt was on the ground. It goes into, it was called the fumble on the field. Goes into replay. Called stands. His butt was clearly touching grass before the ball was out, but they still didn't call it that way. That ends up costing the Vikings that game. The Bengals go down and score on that subsequent drive. Oh, man. Minnesota fans, they're probably one of the least happy fan bases in the league. A lot of really bad things happen to the Vikings. And tough scene for all of you Minnesota fans. Shout out to friend of the show, Ryan Schilling, the only Vikings fans I know, and damn, I just feel bad for him. That is a tough way to lose a game. But, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for our Week 1 breakdown here. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's always a blast. I mean, hopefully, of course, it wasn't with AK this week, Alexander Kropp, but he'll be making his return, kind of like we explained in the preseason or in the NFL season preview. He's busy with work because I wish I could do this full time, but ultimately I can't. We got to do some jobs to actually pay the bills here, but of course you can help with Patreon, patreon.com/fourthandlong. Just $1 a month. Everything helps. And so he'll be back later in October. I'm going to run the show for things. I'll try to bring some guests here, see what we can do, but of course, really appreciate you listening in, ladies and gentlemen. I mean, we had so much stuff to talk about this week. And I'm sure we're going to have even more stuff to talk about in week 2. So can't wait. I can't wait to have you here. Of course, shout out to our Patreon supporters. Our best supporter, of course, goes to Ray Rodriguez. He's our top donor, and he is our top guy as well. Also, huge shout outs to Ryan Watson and Neil Wiley. But ladies and gentlemen, man, it's been a pleasure being able to speak to all of you, and hopefully you enjoyed listening. A couple things to watch out for, of course, is our big time interview dropping with MMA fighter Jared Melton, local guy out of Idaho. He's 3-0. In his second fight, he got a door stroke. Most UFC fighters can't land that in the fight. He goes out there in his second fight of his career. And it was a fun one. Some really deep stories to talk about. Also, really cool stuff. Really great guy. Coming live from their gym, the garage. And it's going to be a blast. So keep it locked for there, ladies and gentlemen. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for listening. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Whether it be NFL, whether it be AFL, whether it be UFC, whether it be our interviews. We got all that good stuff. So stay tuned. Go on. Check out thefourthandlong.com. Check our socials so you can stay up to date on everything. We'll see you in the next one.